Hey everybody, welcome back to Sounds Like a Drum, Kane's independent media production. Today, we are finally getting around to the long awaited, by us here in particular, comparison of Diecast and Triple Flange on the toms. There are a lot of options for hoops on all of the drums on a drum set. There's wood, there's diecast, there's triple flange, there's S hoops, there's all kinds of things. And there are things that they don't make anymore and things that they have yet to make. But today, we're just diving into the two most common, which is triple flange and diecast. Normally, if you've ever seen any of our episodes that include this drum set here, we have the Pearl MasterCast die-cast hoops on top and bottom of all of the toms. They came on the drum set, they sound fantastic. We've never felt like we needed to change them up. But we decided that this would be a great candidate for us to do this with because we've both played this kit a lot. We're super familiar with how it behaves, how it sounds, how it tunes, all of that stuff. Perfect chance to dive into this thing. Now, I should definitely say right here, special thanks to Pearl for sending us some triple flange hoops that are the correct alternatives for this kit here. They sent us a full set of Super Hoop 2 2.3mm triple flange hoops. They are what would be on this if it had come with triple flange, so we're staying right in the lane of what's appropriate for this rig. Now, I know for me, and I think Ben would agree, we have preconceptions, a lot of preconceptions about hoops, and particularly what different types will do or not do with regards to the sound and also the feel of the drums. And the fun thing today is, I know for me, I've never done this kind of comparison on a kit before, so, we're not super sure what's going to happen or if it's actually going to fulfill our expectations or not. So before we do anything else, I think we should probably listen to this kit in its normal form with the die-cast hoops on there. Exactly what I expected because we play these drums a lot and they sound fabulous. I'll go ahead and say right now we're not going to do multiple tunings because it's not really about the tuning range of these hoops. It's more about whether or not the hoops are affecting the sound at a single tuning. We could pick whatever tuning. I just tuned them to how they sounded good today, recorded them a little bit so I could recreate it with the triple flange, and off we go. So we're going to make sure that we both demonstrate these as sort of tom-oriented grooves and also in some kind of fill with a regular groove situation since, there's a lot of different ways to hear these things in a lot of different sorts of contexts and stuff like that. Now, why don't we listen to those just a little bit more in this before we move on to changing it up. Generally, when people talk about and think about die-cast hoops, they think about rigidity, maybe like a stronger kind of attack on the note, maybe a little bit drier sound because there's a little more mass there in the way that they're created. They're definitely, again, more rigid, so the tuning is a little bit different. And overall, I tend to see them on kits that are either vintage jazz kits where they were sort of standard or on some modern rock kits where you want something super sturdy that can take a real beating. Now we're going to swap out everything, which is going to take a little while, and we're going to hear these 2.3 millimeter triple flange. One quick thing to note about the difference between these two hoops physically in terms of what they're made of is that the Diecast are aluminum and the triple flange are steel. So we're dealing with a denser metal here. We're dealing with a different sort of behavior in terms of the way they're constructed. You know, there aren't a lot of like stainless steel or steel in general die-cast hoops out there, though they do make them out of a lot of different things. But it's important to note that the weight is about the same per hoop between the die-cast and the triple flange that we're using today. So most of what you're hearing has more to do with the rigidity and the sort of distribution of the mass in the hoop. Also important to note that we are going to have a back-to-back comparison at the end of the video because, as you may have noticed, they're not really very different. They're really not very different at all. One thing that I do want to mention about why I choose triple flange or die-cast, depending on the kit that I'm using, is that there is a little bit of a feel difference from the stiffness of the hoop versus the sort of more flexibility that you get with a triple flange. And that really has to do also with the range that I'm going to be tuning them in. I do prefer triple flange for lower tunings, and I like die-cast for higher and jazz tunings, or for situations where I'm going to be hitting the rim as part of the percussion if I'm doing like Afro-Cuban stuff or any sort of like percussion-y stuff on the kit, just because there's a little bit more strong kind of attack on that with both cross stick and just like hitting the hoops on the toms. It's worth noting also that the rigidity of die-cast hoops is great for keeping drums from going out of tune when you're really swinging super hard. When you're dealing with triple flange hoops, they are more flexible and there's a possibility of tension rods backing out and things like that if you're really hitting super hard. Additionally, I have noticed on the snare drum with rim shots and a die-cast hoop, if I am hitting hard enough for one of the lugs to loosen and the tension rod to back out, you don't notice it as much because the rim is so stiff. There's still a fair amount of pressure in that zone because of how stiff the rim is. Another thing to take note of that isn't evidenced in this video because we did it in between the shots is that I find it overall to be a little bit easier to get heads in tune with themselves with triple flange hoops because of both less mass and that flexibility and sort of resonance that comes there. The overtones are a little bit clearer. The fundamental is also a little bit clearer down at the dynamics where I'm tuning it at. So just even today, you know, getting them going with the die-cast took how long it normally takes, and when I did them up again with the same heads and the same tuning with the triple flange, making micro adjustments was a little bit easier because just the flexibility of the hoops, it's a little more forgiving. Also, for anybody who's curious, we have an older video where we talk about swapping out hoops on a snare drum. We did die-cast, triple flange, and also wood in a previous video. If you want to check it out, go check it out. Another nice thing if you're starting with diecast hoops is that triple flange hoops are actually a fairly inexpensive purchase if you want to try them out. Diecast can be a little bit more expensive just because of the process and other factors. But a great thing about triple flange hoops is if you want to just check them out, it's not a huge investment. Hoops, generally speaking, unless they are receiving some kind of unusual damage, they last pretty much forever. So it's a great way to just kind of expand the behavior of the drums and get into some different feels. All right, finally, back-to-back comparisons. Here we go. So it's fair to say that the differences are subtle. There are feel differences under the sticks that we talked about that are a little bit more noticeable than just the audio on its own. But suffice it to say, swapping out all the hoops does create a different playing experience. It is something worth checking out, and it's another way to modify the drums you already have so you don't have to buy more drums and have more stuff around that's taking up a lot of space and costs a ton of money. On the flip side, we are also talking about the subtleties of soloed drums here, and if there isn't a dramatic kind of difference in this situation, then I don't think we need to sweat this so much. If you have reasons why you prefer one over the other, to each their own, and that's totally fine. But if you're just out there wondering, hopefully we can put this to bed a little bit in terms of it being some kind of night and day difference that's going to make or break a gig or a session or an audition or whatever. This is one thing that we really don't need to be freaking out about. Now, for those of you out there who would love to see this go further and get into every kind of hoop imaginable, we have been planning here a long-form secondary series that's just comparisons. Every comparison that we could possibly think of. The spreadsheet is enormous. And we are looking for companies, sponsors, people that want to get involved with this kind of thing because we really want to kind of like set a new standard for what it means to learn to understand these differences so that everybody can make intelligent choices and end up getting the sound that they're after. If you're interested in hearing more of what we did today, the full-length demos and some other iterations of all of this stuff, head over to the Patreon, follow the link below, check it out. It is sustaining us right now. That's the best way for you to help us continue to do this, expand things, comparison series, the symbol series that's already started over there, and everything else that we want to do to grow this whole experience for you guys. All right, that about does it. Thanks so much for coming along on this hoop-filled journey. Please like, comment, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you hear about all of our new videos. Please head over to the Patreon, check it out if you get a chance. We have a lot of special stuff over there. We're super excited about it. And lastly, we would love to know your hoop experiences, particularly if changing a hoop out made a huge difference for you, and whether or not a specific brand or style of hoop you just discovered to be super superior to what you were already using, because it is one of those things that we don't swap out as much as we could. Every brand of diecast is different, every thickness of triple flange. It's a whole cornucopia of possibilities out there, and we would love to know what you're using.